Tonight, the severely disabled man who lay helpless as armed thieves burst into his home.
Where's the money?
Paralyzed from the neck down, he could only look on as the gang terrorized his carers and wantonly stole from around him.
They knew I was paralyzed because they didn't take any care at all to think, well, I could have just jumped out of the bed.
Can you help catch the people who did this? Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. We've a studio full of detectives, all hoping that you can help solve their cases tonight. We're going to have more on that terrifying raid on the home of Noel Martin in just a moment. But first, a quick look at tonight's other appeals. Officers from Northern Ireland are hunting the man who broke in to an elderly couple's home a month ago, killing 72-year-old Bertie Atchison.
Give me the money. I want the money back. I want your purse.
That's my mother and father. They've been burgled and my father's unconscious.
I could tell from the way he was lying face down that he couldn't possibly be breathing.
And Martin's back with more wanted faces.
Yes, we've got people wanted for rape, robbery and fraud. And they aren't the only mugshots tonight. Can you name the casual Manchester robbers caught on CCTV nursing a cup of coffee?
We'll also have an appeal to find those responsible for inflicting these terrible injuries on 93-year-old Emma Winnell. She died in Birmingham this week. Matthew is going to be here with the inside story of how police caught a cold and calculating killer who thought he planned the perfect murder.
Yes, Colin Cheetham was a gun fanatic who wanted to prove he could get away with murdering a complete stranger, choosing an unsuspecting taxi driver as his victim.
This was just a random killing of an individual for the sake of killing somebody, to see what it felt like.
And the incredibly rare medieval bronze jug, just like this beautiful replica here, which was saved for the nation, but has now been stolen in a museum raid. Police need your help to find the jug and the man who took it. It's fair to say that 52-year-old Noel Martin has been through a lot. He was paralysed from the neck down in a racist attack whilst he was working in Germany. That was back in 1996. Then, 4 years later, he lost his wife to cancer. It seems unbelievable then that in February this year, Noel and his team of carers would be the targets of a terrifying raid by an armed gang. It happened at his home in Birmingham.
Somebody help! Help! Somebody help!
This is Noel Martin's house in the leafy suburb of Edgbaston in Birmingham. 16 years ago, Noel was paralysed in a racist attack, and he lives here with a team of round-the-clock carers. It's hard to believe, then, that one night back in February, all three would be the targets of a vicious and terrifying armed gang.
I was paralyzed in June 1996 by the neo-Nazis in Germany where I was working, throwing a rock in my car and lost control of the car. I'm paralyzed from the neck downwards. I depend on the carers. They fetch and carry everything. There's absolutely nothing I can do.
On Monday, the 20th of February at 10 p.m, one of Noel's carers had finished for the day and made her usual 10-minute journey home. But little did she know, as she was parking up, an armed gang was lying in wait for her. The gang bundled her into the back of her own car and began to drive.
much money has he got in there? I bet he's got loads in it. I don't know what you're on about. Of course you do. I don't know.
They repeatedly demanded information about a safe,
All of it. I want you to show me.
threatening her with a knife and holding a gun to her head.
You're gonna show me.
Terrified and bewildered, she pleaded for her life.
Put the money in.
Please don't hurt me.
It wasn't long before she began to realise that the gang were driving her back here to Noel's house, and the reason for her abduction became clear.
We heard the bell rang. It was about 10:20, and I didn't expect any visitors. I always instruct them to look through the letterbox before they open the door.
Hey, just let me in.
All right.
I heard a scream. I thought it was a joke because Kieran normally run pranks against each other.
Stop the noise!
But Noel soon realised it wasn't a joke when one of the gang burst into his room wielding a gun.
Where's the money?
I just kept staring at him. And I said, what money?
I haven't got any money.
Home CCTV captures the moment the gang confronted Noel. They brazenly steal from around him while he lies trapped on the bed, unable to move.
Then another one appeared
Is the safe?
and put a knife to my throat.
There's no more money.
Then he saw my wife's engagement ring hanging on a photograph. And he just went over and grabbed it up and he says, where's the rest of the money?
The gang then forced one of the carers into Noel's room, where she had to watch as they threatened to kill him.
No. Please don't hurt him. Don't hurt him.
There's £20 over.
Eventually, she revealed Noel did have a safe.
I didn't realize I'd took the girl to the safe and opened the safe.
It's this way.
They took £1,000
Give me the money.
and my watch, the very expensive watch.
Go. Get out. Get out. You stay there.
They knew I was paralyzed because they didn't take any care at all to think, well, I could have just jumped out of the bed.
The gang left the carers tied up here in the hallway before they made their escape. They were only in the house a matter of minutes, but their actions will live with their victims forever.
Don't worry. I'm going to get us some help. I'm going to get us some help.
My body won't react because my leg's broken.
Somebody help! Please!
I wanted to tell them to shoot, but if I'd egged them on, they would have probably turned the gun onto the carers because they would know that it has no meaning to me whether they shot me or not.
Ian, an attack of this type is horrific in any circumstance, but the fact that it's against a paralysed man makes it even more horrific.
Absolutely. It's a truly horrendous attack on a disabled man who was unable to defend himself. Not only that, but his two female carers were not in any position to defend themselves either. I believe that the offenders would have known Noel's situation and have utilised that to carry out this attack.
Not a great deal was taken in this attack, but the impact on those involved, we don't know what the long-term cost of that may well be.
No, we don't. The cash and the property can be replaced. However, the carers in particular, and Noel, have all been traumatised by this attack. They've still got to work here, they've still got a job to do, and they don't feel safe at work until the attackers are caught.
You know, with the carer being kidnapped, she didn't know where she was going or whether she was going to be raped or killed or what the reason was. Because she's just an innocent person, you know, come to care for someone. At the end of the day, it makes me angry because I can't get up to do something about it.
Truly shocking. Well, joining me now is DC Ian Tomlinson from West Midlands Police. We saw him there in the reconstruction. Ian, a very cynical attack. It seems very well planned and clearly targeted.
Yes, absolutely. From certain aspects of the offence, I've been left in no doubt that Noel was targeted specifically, and that's what makes this offence all the more sickening.
Let's take a look. You've got some good CCTV. Let's take a look at it again. Tell viewers what they're seeing here.
Yes, these are the clearest images. We see here one of the offenders dragging the carer into the kitchen area. He's described as a mixed-race male of medium build. He's the same offender who forces the carer to open the safe.
Yeah, let's talk about the stuff that was taken. Two distinctive things. Tell us about those.
Yes, two distinctive items of jewellery. Firstly, a wristwatch. It's an Ingersoll make. It's of a gold and bronze strap, and it has a diamond-encrusted face. More importantly, is Noel's wife's engagement ring.
Yeah.
He wore this at all times when he wasn't in bed, on a chain around his neck. His wife died 12 years ago, so it has huge sentimental value to him. However, it wouldn't have a lot of financial value to those who took it.
Let's talk, I mean, a knife to the throat, threatening to kill him. The threats were so disproportionate in this case.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, neither Noel himself nor his carers were ever going to put up any sort of resistance to the offenders. I need to know who these people are so I can stop them doing it again, and so that Noel and his carers can put this crime behind them.
OK, Ian, thanks very much. I mean, a terrible ordeal there for Noel and for his carers. They really do need your help tonight. If you know something, call this number now. It's 0500 600 600. If you've been a victim of crime, you can call the victim support line. They're on 0845 30 30 900. Now Martin has the first of tonight's wanted faces.
And we start with David Blood. Last month, the 46-year-old escaped from Sudbury Prison in Derbyshire, where he was serving a life sentence for conspiracy to commit robbery and for firearms offences. Blood, who's from Tamworth but has links across Staffordshire and the Midlands, is considered dangerous. So please, if you see him, don't approach. Just call 999 immediately. Next is John Arthur Radley. The 56-year-old did a runner 3 weeks ago whilst standing trial for a variety of sexual offences against children. He was found guilty of 16 offences in his absence. Radley, who's much fatter now than when this picture was taken, has links to Finsbury Park in North London and to Wiltshire, but he could be anywhere. Number 3 tonight is Janusz Czajkovic. The 37-year-old is wanted in connection with the rape and assault of 2 women. Officers believe that Czajkovic, who is originally from Poland, may well be in North London. And finally, for now, is George Rostas. Detectives from a number of forces want to speak to him about a series of distraction thefts from jewellers and pawn shops around the country. This CCTV from last December shows him slipping a Chopard watch worth £20,000 into his pocket in a pawnbroker's in London before making off without paying. 26-year-old Rostas, who has an Eastern European accent, was last known to be living in Birmingham. Now, all of tonight's faces are on the website. And if you know where they are, call 0500 600 600, or you can text 63399, type crime, leave a space, and then your message.
Now to Coleraine in Northern Ireland and the shocking murder of 72-year-old Bertie Atchison. He was attacked by a burglar in his own home in the early hours of Monday the 30th of April. While Bertie lay dying on the kitchen floor, his killer stepped over his body and demanded money from his terrified wife.
Yes, it's in the kitchen. Can you check out the kitchen?
For the past 15 years, Bertie and Sheila Atchison lived here on this quiet estate in the northern town of Coleraine. They lived in the area all their lives and were popular with the neighbours. No one could have imagined that one night last month, this is where Bertie would be murdered for the sake of just a few £100s.
He was quiet, unassuming, really friendly. If he'd met somebody he didn't know, he always would have spoken, because he always said it doesn't cost anything to be friendly. Basically a family man. They were married for 44 years, were never apart. She suffers from severe arthritis, and Daddy became her carer. And he just was with her from she got up in the morning, literally, till she went to bed at night. He just did everything for her. And I can honestly say that I never once heard him complain about it, not once. They had been round on Sunday evening, as they always were, for dinner, and then they sat for a few hours, and they went home that night at, it was around about 20 to 10 when they left.
Well, safe home.
It only took them a few minutes to drive the short distance to their bungalow in Glenmore Gardens, where they enjoyed a nightcap before heading to bed.
Good night, love.
But just a few hours later, in the early hours of Monday morning, Bertie and Sheila would be woken by the sound of breaking glass. We think the intruder used a lane at the side of the house to get into the Atchisons' back garden. He then used a concrete block to smash a window in the spare bedroom.
What was that? Bertie, did you hear that?
Stay here,
Where
Sheila.
are you going? Bertie, don't go out. Don't.
What are you doing? Get out! You me mommy.
What's happening, Bertie?
Give me the get out! I want the money back. Come on, give us the money, old man. Give us it.
Bertie had asthma, and after confronting the burglar, he fell to the floor and suffered a heart attack.
If you don't give me the money, I'm going to kill your husband.
As Bertie lay dying, the attacker went into the bedroom where he demanded money from Sheila.
I want the money. Come on now. I want your purse.
Bertie, where are you? Bertie!
Unaware that the intruder had left the house, Sheila called her daughter and son-in-law for help.
Hello?
Keith, we've been burgled.
Sheila, are you hurt?
I'm all right.
Is Bertie with you?
I don't know.
For Mum and Dad to be phoning at that time of the morning, there was most certainly something wrong.
Okay, Sheila, just calm down. We're on our way, okay? That's your Mum and Dad.
Sandra and Keith jumped straight into the car. On their way, they saw a man standing on Glengorm Avenue, just round the corner from the Atchisons' house.
We're burgled. A big man came in.
She was absolutely petrified. She was so disorientated. I do remember saying to her, "Mummy, where's Daddy?" And she said, "I don't know. I've been calling for him and he won't answer me."
Bertie, where are you?
I found Bertie's body on the kitchen floor.
Bertie.
And I got down beside Bertie's body to hear if he was breathing. And I could tell from the way he was lying face down that he couldn't possibly be breathing.
That's my mother and father. They've been burgled and my father's unconscious. Okay, is he breathing? Is he breathing, Keith? No!
Bertie died of a heart attack brought on by the assault. His killer made off with just £335. This was a cowardly attack on an elderly couple, and I am convinced that someone knows who was responsible, and I would urge them to pick up the phone. Whoever did this is dangerous and must be caught.
I'd like to tell him what a wonderful man my father was and how he so cruelly ended his life. I'd like to tell him about the pain and the hurt that he has caused and the pain that feels like it will never ever go away. I would like him to know that I listen to my mum crying every night in bed.
But there had got to be someone out there who also knows what this guy did. Maybe a mum or a partner. And if they know who that is, if they have any compassion, they will hand this person in.
44 years together as a couple and never apart. Well, DCI Ian Harrison from the Northern Ireland Police Service is with us now. We know that Bertie died of a heart attack, but it's important for people at home to know that you are treating this as murder.
Yes, I am treating this as murder. Bertie was struck about the face a number of times and sustained some injury. I believe this is a case of murder, and we need to find out who was responsible.
You think it's somebody local. Why is that?
Bertie's partner, Sheila, believes that the person had a local accent. He wore grey jogging bottoms and a dark top. I'm convinced that someone in that local area knows who carried out this awful attack. I need them to pick up the phone tonight.
That's for sure. A couple of areas around about the attack, or where their bungalow was, that are important to this case. Just point them out and explain why. This incident happened in the early hours of Monday, 30th of April. Bertie's daughter, Sandra, observed a male standing at a hedgerow in Glengorm Avenue at about 1:50 a.m. and also a neighbour heard voices at about 1:30 a.m. in the morning. I need to speak to these people and find out what they know. Also, if anybody else was in the area between 1 and 2 a.m. on that date. OK, let's take a look at this. It was some purse, sort of exactly like this, really, that's still missing. This was Sheila's purse. This is a copy of Sheila's purse. It's between 6 and 8 inches in length. It's red leather, and it contained a number of store cards. One of the cards being a MERS gift voucher to the value of £50. The purse is still outstanding. I need to know where it is tonight. OK, Ian, thanks very much. I should let you know at home there's a £10,000 Crime Stoppers reward for information that leads to a conviction in this case. So if you know who did it, do call the studio now, 0500 600 600, or you can call Crime Stoppers. Do that anonymously. They're on 0800 555 111. Now for some updates on previous cases.
And we start with news of an appeal from our last programme. 76-year-old Llewellyn Thomas was found murdered at his home in Cambridgeshire in December following a burglary. Well, this week, 5 people were arrested on suspicion of murder. 2 men, aged 20 and 24, were bailed today until next month, while 2 men, aged 22 and 26, as well as a 16-year-old boy, have been bailed till July. A 26-year-old woman arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice has also been bailed. We'll keep you updated on this case as it develops.
Next, a cold case appeal from March's show when we reconstructed the murder of Simon Tang from Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland, who died after being robbed outside his family's takeaway back in 1996. Since the programme, 2 men have been charged with his murder and 3 others with perverting the course of justice. We will, of course, bring you more on this when we can.
Finally, you might remember this footage from our last programme of a man being punched in Bath during the early hours of Valentine's Day this year. Well, we had dozens of calls naming the man in this picture as 23-year-old Christopher Riley from Oldham. In fact, after seeing himself on the show, Riley got on a train to Bath and handed himself in. Last week he admitted the assault and will be sentenced next month. Martin.
Right, now time for some new CCTV, starting with some rather interesting driving in Beckenham in Kent. Closing time at the Halifax Bank in Beckenham on a Tuesday evening last November. As 2 members of staff begin to fill one of the cash machines, a silver VW Polo is reversed straight through the bank's main doors. Talk about mirror signal manoeuvre. As the terrified staff run off, a black man wearing a hoodie gets out. He grabs 3 cash boxes containing thousands of pounds, but he's not done. Popping back for a 4th before jumping back in the car and driving off the way he came. There's a reward of up to 25 grand for information leading to the arrest and conviction of this guy. Name, please. Outside a high-end jeweller's shop in Lytham in Lancashire on a Thursday tea time last September. A smartly dressed man in a grey suit and glasses has a good look in the window before entering the shop. As he hesitates between the 2 security doors, a black Ford Mondeo pulls up outside and a gang of masked men jump out. The suited man's pause allows the raiders to burst in, smashing through the shop's internal doors using sledgehammers. Most of the gang stream inside, where they fill holdalls full of expensive jewellery valued at up to £500,000. But one of them has to acrobatically stretch to keep the 2 doors open. Feel the burn. The gang are in and out in just over 2 minutes and back into the waiting Mondeo. despite the best efforts of a have-a-go hero who tries to stop them, even using a chair. We need to know who they are. Can you name the suited gentleman and his less gentle companions? Now, you've heard of casual clothing. Well, this is casual thieving. It's the morning of New Year's Day inside a newsagent in Wythenshawe in Manchester. A guy in dark clothing walks in, followed by a man in a hoodie with a scarf covering his face. The first man appears to be browsing the shelves, but he knows what he's after: black bin bags. He joins his mate in the hoodie, who seems to have brought his morning coffee in with him. What a mug. The reason for the bin bags now becomes clear, as the pair force the shop assistant to fill them with thousands of pounds worth of cigarettes and tobacco, as well as taking £400 in cash from the till. The thieving pair eventually leave, taking 4 bags full of loot and their coffee cup with them. Have a look at these mugshots and name them tonight. Lots more CCTV still to come, and don't forget that everything you've seen is on the website. If you recognise anyone from the footage, call 0500 600 600 or text on 63399. Type crime, leave a space and then add your message.
Right, also still to come tonight, a fresh appeal to find the men who murdered 31-year-old Tracy Mertens in the most appalling way imaginable.
Oh my God.
The pain she must have suffered, nobody could imagine, and the fear must have been awful for her.
And we reveal how a meticulous murderer's single mistake led detectives to his door.
He'd gone to some real great lengths to plan it, and I still believe he thought he'd prepared and committed the perfect murder.
And the medieval bronze jug, just like this beautiful replica here, which has been stolen in a museum raid. Can you name the man caught stealing it on CCTV? But first, Matthew's got the latest on what's happening on the phones. Matthew.
Yes, let's grab a quick word with Ian Tomlinson from West Midlands Police, who's investigating that raid on Noel Martin's house in Birmingham. Ian, what's come in?
We've had a number of interesting calls, which I'm looking into further. However, I still need to know who that person is in the CCTV in the kitchen. I'm convinced that somebody will recognise that male. Not only that, all 3 males involved. People will have been talking, people will know who they are. I need them to tell me who they are.
Now, the watch, the engagement ring, anything on those?
Not yet, no. The watch is very distinctive, an Ingersoll men's gents wristwatch. I want to know if that's been offered for sale somewhere in or around the Birmingham area since February. And Noel's wife's engagement ring, I want to know where that is now. It's very distinctive. Somebody may have seen it, somebody may know something about it.
And it had huge sentimental value for him. Remember, this is a disabled man. Please, if you know something, call in. Kirsty.
Now, you may well have seen this shocking image over the past few weeks. 93-year-old Emma Winnell was attacked as she slept in her bed at her home in Birmingham during the night of Monday the 30th of April. This week, the great-grandmother died as a result of her injuries, which included a fractured skull, a broken arm and a broken wrist, and a partially severed finger. Police are now treating the case as a murder inquiry. Earlier this month, her daughter Joyce Blenko spoke at a press conference.
To see your mum viciously beaten and covered in blood is the most horrific nightmare. And it's broken my heart to hear my frail and defenceless mum managed to say she was screaming for help and no one came.
Well, it is really difficult to comprehend how Emma's family must be feeling right now, but one thing we do know for sure is that they urgently want the person who did this to be caught. If you know anything at all about the attack, I would urge you, please, to call now and speak to officers from West Midlands Police. They're here in the studio waiting for your call. It's the usual number, 0500 600 600. Over to Martin.
Time for some more wanted faces. We start with Angela Owen, but she also uses quite a few aliases, including Anne Hall, Carla Geiser, Helen Gee and Angela Pogson. Detectives want to speak to the 46-year-old in connection with the death of a child and about a series of frauds worth more than £250,000. Owen has links to Manchester, Bradford, Halifax and Weston-super-Mare. Next is Martin John Bond. Police want to speak to the 41-year-old in connection with a number of serious assaults which took place between December 2008 and August 2009 in the Wolverhampton area. He also has links with London, Derby, Birmingham and South Yorkshire. Number 7 tonight is Wayne Tidy. Detectives want to speak to the 45-year-old in connection with a rape. Tidy, who has a Yorkshire accent, is linked to Somerset, Northumbria and South Yorkshire. He has several tattoos, including a snake on his right arm and 3 entwined rings, and the name Chez, spelt C-H-E-Z, on his left arm. And finally, this is Nicholas Edwards. The 49-year-old is wanted for a recall to prison, where he was serving a sentence for armed robbery. Edwards, who has links to the Croydon, Bromley and Crawley areas of London, has a variety of tattoos, including a bird on either side of his neck and the word love, which has been crossed out, on his left hand, and hate on his right hand. Charming. Now, call 0500 600 600 if you recognise any of these faces, or text 63399, type crime, leave a space and then add your message. And of course, all these images stay online until they're caught.
Now, 3 years ago, we asked for your help in solving the appalling murder of 31-year-old mother of 2, Tracy Mertens. You may well remember that her murder was particularly horrendous. She was kidnapped and set on fire outside a church in Cheshire. It happened in 1994. Well, detectives believe that they are closer than ever to a major breakthrough and are here again tonight hoping that you can help them finally catch Tracy's killers. You may find the following film distressing.
Just before Christmas in 1994, Tracy Mertens was found here in a churchyard in Cheshire. She was naked and covered in horrific burns. She died from her injuries just 12 hours later, but her killers have never been caught.
Tracy was 31 when she died. She was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, inside and out. I just remember her adoring Daniel and Kelly. She just loved them 2 children to bits. Even at 11 and 12, they were her babies.
My mum was very quiet, very caring, very loyal.
She was a perfect daughter, a perfect sister, and then she became the perfect mum.
Tracy was living in Rochdale at the time of her murder. The family had left their home in Birmingham just a few weeks earlier, as Tracy's partner Joey, a known heroin addict, owed people in the area money.
The build-up to Christmas that year was going to be a bleak one.
Dad, can I have a remote-control car for Christmas?
We've got no money. We've just moved house.
It didn't seem like Christmas. No presents under the tree or anything, or...
Joey.
What?
I'm going back to Birmingham.
Well, how long are you going to be?
Well, I'm back tonight. We need some money for Christmas.
Right. Quick as you can, eh?
Tracy stayed with her sister-in-law in Birmingham that night. The next morning, she went back to the family's old house in Cattle's Grove to collect some belongings and sort out the family's benefits. The men bundled Tracy into what police believe was a canary yellow Mark II Ford Escort and blindfolded her. She told police her attackers spoke a kind of Jamaican patois with each other. This is where Tracy was snatched and dragged from her home. She would have been struggling and distressed. But we know she wasn't the only one on Cattle's Grove that morning. A man walked past as the men were forcing Tracy into the car.
You all right,
He was heading in the direction of the Weybridge MOT depot, but has never been traced. The men brought Tracy here, a church in Eton near Macclesfield, over an hour's drive away. What happened next beggars belief.
No!
Tracy was found several hours later.
Please help me, God, please help. Could you get the numbers out to Eton Church? There's a girl that is naked, looks as if she's been set on fire.
She was rushed to hospital with 95% burns. Her injuries were so severe that doctors struggled to find a vein to give her medication.
The pain she must have suffered, nobody could imagine, and the fear must have been awful for her.
But over the next 12 hours, Tracy was to put all her last energy into telling police what had happened to her. She died the following day, Christmas Eve, 1994. But Tracy's efforts had not been in vain. In 2009, police used her information to appeal on Crimewatch. Now detectives need your help one last time to finally bring Tracy's killers to justice. Steve, how much progress did you make after the 2009 appeal?
We had a massive response from the original Crimewatch appeal. I now believe that we are genuinely close to bringing this matter to a conclusion. But we still have a few pieces of vital information that we need.
And one of those is that witness that saw Tracy being dragged from her home, isn't it?
That's right. Not only did he see her being dragged from her home, he actually spoke to Tracy. He asked if she was all right, if she was okay. He was one of the last people to see Tracy alive. 18 years on, he may not think that he's important, but believe you me, he's vital to this investigation.
Life without my mum was like just being lost.
It's just unbelievable. I can still feel that pain now from that day.
I've been through so much on my own and done so many things on my own when she should have been there.
It is 18 years since Tracy was murdered in the most terrible way imaginable. It's been 18 years of pain for her family and 18 years of silence from those who know who did it. Surely, now is the time to break that silence.
She's missed out on so much. Her children have missed out on so much. I have as a sister. I've missed out on a friend. You know, you wanted to grow old with her.
She deserves to be at peace, be at rest, because I don't think she'll ever will be until these people are caught.
It's just like a horror story. DS Steve Curry from Cheshire Police is with us now here in the studio. Before I talk to you, Steve, I want to say to people at home tonight, we've got a photograph that was taken of Tracy. It was taken as she was lying terribly burnt in her hospital bed just a few hours before she died on Christmas Eve 1994. We're going to put that on screen now. The reason we're doing that is to remind anyone holding back information of the graphic truth of what those men did. You may prefer to look away now. OK, we're taking the photograph off the screen now. Steve, it really does beggar belief what these people did, and it is important that you have made significant progress at this point.
That's right, Kirsty, we have, but this horrific murder has left Tracy's children, Daniel and Kelly, without a mum for the last 18 years. And as you say, back in 2009, we had a fantastic response from Crimewatch viewers. We just need a little bit more help in filling a few gaps.
OK, let's hope they can do it again tonight. Tell us about this key witness. Could be really important, this.
This is true. He is a key witness to this investigation. He actually saw Tracy being bundled into the back of the yellow Escort. He spoke to her. Back in 1994, he would have been between 35 and 45 years of age. He's 5'7", stocky build, grey thinning hair. He's wearing distinctive blue trousers. He was walking along Cattell's Grove towards the Weybridge MOT Centre, and we really need this guy to come forward.
OK, that's vital. What else are you looking for tonight?
Again, back on the original appeal, we had a lot of anonymous information. One viewer in particular named a suspect for us. We would really, really urge him to call us back this evening. We do have special measures in place where we can offer a witness that may need some type of protection.
OK, and he can talk directly to you or your team tonight. We can guarantee him that. I should also tell you there's a 30 grand reward on offer, so please, if you do have information, maybe you're that crucial witness we've just been talking about, now is the time to call 0500 600 600. Now it's time for some more updates on some previous cases.
And we start with some excellent news on a case we asked for your help with in March of last year concerning a 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted as she made her way home from school in Sheffield in November 2010. Well, last month, 22-year-old Jordan Eddie Padley from Fox Hill in Sheffield pleaded guilty to 3 offences relating to the attack. And 2 weeks ago, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison and will be on the sex offenders register for life.
Next, a case we featured in September 2010. A postmaster was badly injured when he was attacked by a man wielding an axe at his post office in Cumberbatch in Cheshire in June last year. Thanks in part to leads from viewers, the man responsible was identified as 40-year-old Delroy York from Birmingham. And earlier this month, he was convicted of armed robbery and given an indeterminate prison sentence. He will serve at least 9 years before being eligible for parole. A fantastic result.
Finally, you might remember this CCTV of 2 men viciously assaulting a pub landlord dressed as a French maid during a fancy dress party in Torquay on New Year's Eve 2010. Well, thanks to Crimewatch viewers, those 2 attackers were identified as brothers Robert and Daniel Graham. In March, 20-year-old Robert on the left was sentenced to 18 months in prison, and 3 weeks ago, Daniel on the right, who's 23, was sentenced to a year. 2 violent thugs now behind bars, thanks to your calls. Great work, Martin.
More CCTV now, this time beginning with a brutal armed robbery at a post office in Lancashire. It's approaching closing time on a Friday night last November. The female shop assistant is just about to lock up when 2 armed masked men storm in. They grab her and threaten her with a knife while telling her colleague behind the glass screens to open up the secure office. Meanwhile, a 3rd man enters the shop carrying a sawn-off shotgun. As they smash her colleague's face against the safety screen, the terrified woman behind the counter empties the tills. The gang look like they're finished, but they're not. Going back to assault the cashier again, one of them kicking her hard. As they make their getaway, an innocent man who tried to stop them was shot in the leg. This was a terrifying and violent attack. There's a reward of up to 25 grand for information leading to the conviction of these men. Name them tonight. This is a corner shop in Sidcup on a Wednesday morning a few days after Christmas. A man in a stylish woolly hat walks in, followed by his mate, who's also sporting some impressive headwear. The first man approaches the counter and asks the female assistant for some alcohol. The second man then butts in. As she's distracted, the first man leans over the counter and grabs a gold chain from around her neck. The terrified woman tries to get away by running out of the shop, but the men follow her, throwing her to the ground before running off. These men viciously attacked a lone female. Names, please. The Co-op Bank in Peterborough on a Saturday lunchtime in February, and another woolly hat wearer. This one waits patiently in line but seems to lose his nerve after a few seconds, suddenly becoming very interested in the leaflets on display. However, he's soon back in the queue and eventually gets served. But this is most definitely an unauthorised cash withdrawal. He hands the woman behind the counter a note saying he has a bomb and forces her to hand over thousands of pounds in cash, even giving her a bag to put it in. He then calmly walks out. Detectives are banking on your help. Who is he? Inside a North London supermarket on a Sunday afternoon in March. An overweight man in a pink top enters the shop. He picks up a basket and starts wandering around. While inside, he speaks to a mum and her young children. The children go off alone, followed by the man. Just moments later, he assaults one of them. This happened in the middle of the day in a busy shop. We need to know who this man is tonight. All the CCTV we've shown tonight stays online until they're caught. And if you recognise anyone, just call 0500 600 600 or text on 63399.
Of all the murders that police investigate, so-called stranger murders are among the most difficult to crack. But when Colin Cheetham decided to kill, not only did he pick a stranger as his victim, he also planned the killing with terrifying precision. Matthew takes up the story of how Cheetham's obsessive personality would ultimately bring about his downfall.
This is Cromford Station in the Peak District. To most people, the peaceful seclusion here seems idyllic. But seen through the eyes of a potential killer, it presented a much darker opportunity. It appeared to be the perfect location to commit the perfect murder. On the 17th of September 2009, Stuart Ludlam, a 43-year-old taxi driver and father of 3, was found dead in the boot of his own car. He'd been shot in the head with a rifle.
The case was unique from day one. What you tend to find is there's a lot of witnesses about, there's CCTV about, there's passers-by, etc. Whereas here there was none of that, and the isolation created a great deal of difficulty in those early stages.
As well as a lack of evidence, there was also no obvious motive. Who would have wanted Stuart, a popular family man, dead?
Usually what you find in murder cases, you have some connection between the victim and the offender. You have some reason for that murder to take place.
But this was no ordinary murder. It had been carried out by a complete stranger. Colin Cheetham was a gun fanatic and had a compulsive personality. So when he decided to become a killer, he prepared with obsessive attention to detail. Key to his plan was the idea of a motiveless murder, with a victim who could never be linked to him by police. But what stranger would agree to meet Cheetham out of the blue? A simple phone call to a local taxi firm using a pay-as-you-go mobile would provide him with the perfect victim.
Cromford Station. It was just a taxi driver, and I still think that Stuart was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and if it hadn't been him, it would have been another taxi driver.
The secluded location was no accident either. Cheetham visited 3 other railway stations before selecting Cromford, taking photographs and poring over train timetables. This was to be a crime of precision rather than passion. Having picked a window of time when no trains were due to pass through Cromford, the killer made his move.
Jesus Christ, mate, what are you doing?
Out of the car. Get in the car.
You've got kids, mate. Please don't.
Cheetham had satisfied his desire to take a human life. But despite his obsessive attention to detail, he'd made a single and critical mistake.
We established that the phone that had been used to make the call was topped up Morrison's in Derby, and a credit card was used. And that credit card belonged to Colin Cheetham.
Amazingly, despite ensuring he'd used untraceable cash to buy the phone, he'd used his own credit card to top it up. It was the breakthrough detectives desperately needed. And it didn't take police long to discover that Cheetham was obsessed with guns. He and a friend were members of a shooting club and shared a fascination with firearms.
They travelled the world shooting, so we knew how fanatical they were about the guns. And I think what it demonstrated, certainly to me and the team, was that this was just a random killing of an individual for the sake of killing somebody, to see what it felt like.
When detectives visited Cheetham's home, they found squalid conditions, rooms piled high with debris, including gun magazines, train timetables, and dozens of plastic bottles, some containing urine. But Cheetham was still confident his careful scheming and well-rehearsed cover story would fool police.
He meticulously planned the murder and up to, and indeed had practiced it. When we interviewed him, he'd got this arrogance and he thought he was far better than everybody else. He just told his story, and he gave an elaborate story of what he'd done. He described coming to the railway station. He was trying to make a calendar of railway stations. So he'd been up here, he'd come to take some photographs up and down the track.
At interview, Cheetham told police he'd discovered Stuart's body and had panicked. But then he made another mistake.
He described seeing that he'd been shot in the head. Because of the way Stuart was positioned, because his head was down in the very corner, you could not physically see that. You had to have been there or know that that had happened to have seen that.
And more evidence was mounting against Cheetham.
What we did find on the car was some smudge marks, and we think they were from some type of latex glove. And when we did search Colin Cheetham's car, we found latex gloves in the glove box. And we did some work on his clothing and we found some blood, and it was, when we had it analysed, it was Stuart's blood.
Colin Cheetham's lies were no longer holding up. He was tried and found guilty of murder. His painstaking plans had been undone by a single blunder, using that credit card.
He'd gone to some real great lengths to plan it. But I think what you tend to find is there's always a mistake somewhere. Ultimately, Colin Cheetham got caught because of his own arrogance. And I still believe he thought he'd prepared and committed the perfect murder.
A criminal profiler working with detectives was given an outline of the case, and his opinion provided a final, chilling perspective on Cheetham.
Without knowing who he was, he described him to a T. He thought he was a serial killer. I don't think he had committed a murder before. I think this was perhaps his first one. And I think what would have happened is if he hadn't have been caught, he would have gone on to commit further murders because he'd got away with it.
So odd. Murder really just for the, if you like, the sport of it.
Yes, it's one of the most disturbing cases we've ever looked at. To take a life for the hell of it, for the thrill, just to see what it felt like, it's really, really chilling.
And tell me, Matthew, what did detectives discover once they started looking into his life?
Well, the criminal profiler, we talked about it, got it bang on the mark. He predicted he'd be reclusive, overweight, unwell. And after they arrested Cheetham, they used the same profiler to develop a strategy on how best to interview him. And they decided it was crucial to make him think he was the person in control. He was the person with all the power. And it worked because he became very easygoing, very talkative, produced an extraordinary amount of detail in those police interviews, and then detectives turned the tables on him, put him under pressure, confronted him with all that evidence, and he completely changed. There were huge explosions of anger. I suppose the control he so craved had been taken away.
And what about the control? Because we see all this meticulous planning there, and then this odd thing with the top-up of the phone card.
It's almost inexplicable, apart from his compulsive, obsessive personality. You see, he had this rule that if he bought something, if it was less than £10, he'd pay cash. If it was more, he'd use a card. Now here, the phone top-up was only £5, but he'd got it at the same time as buying £20 worth of petrol. So £25, in his world, that meant he had to use a card. That simple mistake produced one loose end, and when you pulled it, the whole thing unravelled.
Fascinating. Matthew, thanks very much. Now, just come around here. Take a little look at, well, something rather special. It's an exact replica of an incredibly rare medieval bronze piece of metalwork. It's known as the Wenlock jug. Oh, sadly, the real version was stolen from a museum in Luton around about a fortnight ago. DS Barry Townsend from Bedfordshire Police is investigating the theft. Evening, Barry.
Evening.
Tell me a bit more about what happened.
Well, Kirsty, on Saturday the 12th of May, between 11:20 to 11:25 p.m, an unknown offender has smashed their way into the Stockwood Discovery Centre in Luton. Inside, they've then attacked a high-security display cabinet which contained the Wenlock jug and removed it from the centre.
Yeah, we're taking a look at the CCTV here. There he goes.
Yep, he's obviously knows exactly what he's gone for. He's walked straight in, attacked the cabinet with the jug, and then removed the jug without damaging anything else.
Now, this replica is very beautiful, but why is the jug itself so important?
Well, the jug's important. It's very significant because there's very few examples of British metalwork from that period. It was made for the Wenlock family, who were influential in Luton in the 15th and 14th century, and it bears an inscription, "My Lord Wenlock," on there.
Right, pretty special. I hate to bring up the filthy subject of money, but it is worth a lot of money.
Yes, in 2005, the museums from Luton received numerous donations to raise the £750,000 to keep the jug in England. It was going to go to the US if they hadn't.
OK, lots of money. I should say that the jug's insurers have offered a 25 grand reward for its safe return, so if you have got any idea where it might be, or indeed who took it, please call us now on the usual number 0500 600 600. Time for a last quick update on what's coming on the phones. Martin.
Now, if you remember that robbery on Noel Martin in Edgbaston, a paralysed man lying helpless in his bed, his carers threatened with knives and guns. Well, the house was equipped with CCTV cameras, and that footage has jogged your memories. Names are being phoned through, names of considerable interest to the police. Please do keep those coming. The bank ram raid in Kent, we are getting names and locations on that. Well done.
OK, that's everything for now, but if you need a second look at any of tonight's cases, they're all on our website, of course, where they stay until someone's caught. It's bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. I should also tell you that Rav Wilding will soon be back on your screens on our sister programme, the Crimewatch Roadshow. It starts a week on Monday. That's the 11th of June at 9:15 in the morning on BBC One, and it runs for a month. The phone lines tonight are going to stay open until midnight tomorrow. We'll be back again at 10:35 after the news with the latest on tonight's calls. Until then, from everyone on the show, bye-bye.